Welcome to Never Tell Us the Odds. My name is Michael Allen Lake, and today we're going to be talking about the Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Now, if you've watched this channel before, then you've probably heard us talk about the three different iterations of the Star Wars expanded universes. Today, I want to talk about a key part of that first expanded universe, the first original Star Wars novel, Splinter of the Mind's Eye. I also want to point out that for a variety of legal reasons, Splinter has been back in the news lately. So this video is looking at the story of the novel itself, but at the end of the video we will briefly address the recent controversy and provide additional information about said controversy. This is going to include links to relevant media stories and some of the other information, all of which will be in the description down below. Now then, Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Released in 1997, it was written by Alan Dean Foster, and while it was the first independent Star Wars novel, it was not actually the first Star Wars novel that Foster wrote. Alan Dean Foster, an established science fiction author, had been the ghostwriter for the novelization of the first Star Wars film. In those days, they were less concerned about spoilers than they were about drumming up business. So the novelization hit bookstores in actually November 1976, a good 6 months before the movie itself debuted. Foster's contract included a second novel, this time an original premise. The reasoning behind this was that George Lucas was trying to cover all the angles. While he believed in the potentiality of Star Wars as a franchise, he knew there was a chance the movie would not do that well commercially. So he wanted Foster's second novel to provide the basis for a potential lower budget sequel that would allow Lucas a foundation to make another Star Wars movie. Obviously, Star Wars proved to be a massive commercial success, and Lucas no longer had to worry about the possibility of being stuck with a low budget sequel. So despite the book's critically massive success, including spending almost 3 months on the New York Times bestsellers list, Splinters of the Mind's Eye became a one and done. But looking at the story through the lens of a possible sequel is a fascinating exercise. Foster was given relatively free rein for story development with only a handful of caveats. He could not include any special effects heavy space dogfighting scenes. He was encouraged not to call for any major props or set designs in case that spiraled cost, and, perhaps most significantly, he could not use Han Solo or Chewbacca. The primary reason being that Harrison Ford was not under contract to do any of the sequels, and Lucas did not want that to get in the way of greenlighting a film adaptation of the story if he got approved for a second film. But think about that for a second. No space dogfights, no Han and Chewie. This was definitely going to be a tighter, more intimate story than what Lucas had attempted with A New Hope. Now, Foster accepted the conditions, and so he decided to set the action on a misty jungle planet so as to keep costs down. This meant it could be filmed on a soundstage as opposed to being filmed on location. As for the story itself, it begins with a fairly standard adventure fare. Luke, Leia, R2, and 3PO are trying to find planets to side with the Rebel Alliance, or as it's known in the book, the Rebel Underground, when an energy storm forces them to crash on the dank, swamp, and mud-covered planet of Sarcophagus 5, which is known to local inhabitants as Mimbom. Unfortunately for them, Mimbom is crawling with Imperials. As they try to find a way off the planet, they're approached by an elderly, Force-sensitive woman named Hala. She possesses a shard of an ancient crystal known as the Kyber Crystal, and claims that it can focus the Force with potentially deadly results. Luke and Leia keep looking for a way off the planet and keep running into trouble. Bar fights, captured by stormtroopers, then have to stage a jailbreak. They find allies in the form of these two alien Yuzum who journey with them. There's a harrowing chase through the dangerous swamps and mud of the planet, and finally, a confrontation with Darth Vader himself. It's a good and adventurous romp that certainly echoes a lot of the set pieces of A New Hope. Yet there are also a couple of unexpected moments, especially for those who are looking back at where Star Wars was in the 1970s. There are several scenes of explicit attraction between Luke and Leia, both on a romantic and on a sexual level. Because, of course, this is before they'd been established as siblings. And at one point during the climactic duel, Vader knocks Luke's lightsaber out of his hand and pins him beneath a boulder. So in order to buy him time, Leia picks up the lightsaber, starts fighting Vader directly. This allows Luke the ability to get free. Now granted, she has some trouble holding her own, and she receives numerous wounds in her fight with Vader, but think about this. Leia picks up a lightsaber and fights a Dark Lord of the Sith. Aside from a brief flashback in Rise of Skywalker, we've never seen Leia wield a lightsaber. And here she is going toe-to-toe with Darth Vader. So Luke recovers, takes the saber back, slices off Vader's hands, which also sounds familiar. Yet despite this, Luke and Leia are still unable to defeat the Dark Lord. Eventually they force Vader to lose his balance and he falls into a pit. Because that's what you do with the Darth Lord of the Sith, you fall into a pit. Now obviously there's more to the story than I've outlined, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but I do encourage you to go out and read the book. and the book is very different from other Star Wars books that you might have read. As we know, George Lucas borrowed very heavily when writing A New Hope from the story structure of the quasi-mythological journey of the hero and what he goes through as he evolves. And you see strong elements of that same journey in this story as well. This is a story from when Empire Strikes Back and everything that came after did not exist. And Foster had to extrapolate what a logical, low-budget, canonical story might include. And the story, as it was written in 1978, isn't canon. It cannot be canon. There are too many things that are different about it. Yet the book was re-released in 1994 and received a comic book adaptation from Dark Horse Comics 2 years later. You know, that adaptation by Terry Austin and Chris Sprouse, they did stray slightly from the original source material and included characters from The Empire Strikes Back who were not in Foster's original novel. Yet I want to take a moment to point out a couple of elements that might have sounded familiar to a few of you as I talked about the story of the Splinter of a Mind's Eye. The swampy and mud-caked world of Mimban shows up later both in the Clone Wars series and in Solo. It's the world where Han first met Chewbacca. The Kyber crystal, K-A-I-B-U-R-R, sounds quite similar to what eventually became known as the Kyber crystals, K-Y-B-E-R, crystals used to power both lightsabers and the Death Star superweapon. Now, the species named Yuzum is more of a deep cut. In the book, they're basically a sort of low-budget Wookiee. Big, strong, not quite as hairy. But the 1997 special edition of Return of the Jedi, Lucas introduces us to an alien, Yuzum, almost the same spelling, but swaps out the E for a second U. These guys are tall, furry natives of Endor, and despite that, one of them very noticeably is singing with the band in Jabba's palace. So while Splinter of the Mind's Eye is not canon, clearly there was still a lot of love for it over at Lucasfilm. Now, before we close, I want to address the recent controversy regarding Splinter, Alan Dean Foster, and the fine folks over at Disney. Specifically, Foster has claimed that despite his work still being reprinted and sold in various formats since Disney acquired both Lucasfilm and 20th Century Fox, he is no longer receiving royalties from his work on either Star Wars or his novelization of the movie Alien. Foster has been extremely public in his need for these royalty payments due to his wife's serious medical issues and his own battle with an aggressive form of cancer. Since the story has gone public, the writing community has rallied behind Foster. The Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America has launched a new task force in partnership with the Authors Guild, the Horror Writers Association, the National Writers Union, Novelists Incorporated, the Romance Writers of America, and Sisters in Crime, specifically to address this issue. Using the Twitter-friendly moniker #DisneyMustPay, the task force is calling on all Disney-owned companies to honor the original agreements with their authors. Given the number of companies Disney has acquired in the past 10 years, that is not an insignificant number of companies. Now, we put links to these articles and the press releases in the description below, but if you would like Brendan and me to do a video on this topic, let us know in the comments. And if you have the inclination, go check out some of Alan Dean Foster's original works. Personally, I recommend both the Pip and Flink series and his Greater Commonwealth stories. There's some good, enjoyable, rollicking science fiction adventures. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. And if you made it this far, please hit that like button. And again, let us know in the comments what you think. Would you like to know more about past expanded universes? Or would you like to know more about the recent controversy? In short, what would you like to know next about a galaxy far, far away?